And so I wanted to start off, and this book does that so well, but I want to start off of what does it feel like growing up with a teenage mom who has an addiction? Like, I think that is so formative in so many ways, and it's so easy to forget that that's where you started because of your career.
Growing up with my mother, a teenage mom, it's like we grew up together. It's almost like having a big sister. I mean, even to this day, you know, it's like I get to have two roles in my mom. Like sometimes she's still my big sister, and then sometimes she really comes in like, as my mother. You know what I mean? As you saw in the book, it's like I had all this freedom, running crazy in the streets and what have you. But there was such pivotal moments where Adrienne came to the rescue as my mother, right? And she still does that to this day. But it was, you know, I did a lot of having to raise myself. And there are parts of that, there's pros and cons to that. There's a lot of pros. It's like, that is the part that made it possible for me to come to LA at the age of 18 on my own and figure this Hollywood game out, right? Just with no fear, completely fearless. But then also kind of growing up with certain ideas of what I thought love was, or certain survival mechanisms that, you know, as I got older, didn't quite serve me. But I think that we all have that, no matter what our family background is. You know what I'm saying? We all kind of pick up things that along the way that don't serve us for the entirety of our journey. I tell you, I learned a lot having a young mom. At an early age. I really do think that even with our trials and our challenges, that the Great Supreme gave me the mom I was supposed to have and the most perfect mother and the journey that I was supposed to have to prepare me for other parts of my journey. But, you know, it was challenging and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, and I love Gammy, so I just want to put that.
Yeah, we all love Gammy. We all love Gammy.
Yeah, and but it's really interesting. There was one line in your book that really kind of cemented that feeling of unlovable to me from that time. And you said there was a time when you felt like you were not being a priority to the two people who gave you life. Like that was line, hard. That really hit me because I was like,
yeah, that was probably really difficult. And like you had two parents who drugs were their focus and the lifestyle that came with it. You know, I also talk about in the book when my father told me at 7 years old, I can't be your father. And it's just like, wow, okay, what do I do with this?
What does a 7-year-old do with that?
You just kind of internalize it and you kind of go, okay, what's wrong with me? What is it about me that I'm not enough for these two people to look at me as a priority? Because I see everybody else's parents and it looks like their kids are their priority. So what's wrong with me? So I internalized this idea of not being enough, not being lovable. And it's strange because it's not that I didn't feel like my mother didn't love me. It's just that, am I lovable enough to be the priority? Am I lovable enough for you to show up for me as the mom that I see other moms be, you know? So I definitely internalized that. And I think that I took that into the world of like, I'm just going to constantly having to prove myself. And I'm lovable enough.
Yeah.
And I think that was some of the messaging that I took from my childhood into my adulthood.
And I appreciate you going back to that 7-year-old self because in hindsight and now looking back, you can make sense of it.
Yes.
And you can connect the dots. But it's like when you're actually in that position, it's very natural, as you said, to just internalize it. And I think that what's really interesting with your journey is we all have to develop the emotional skills our parents didn't have.
Yeah.
And the earlier we do that, the easier and simpler life becomes. But often most of our energy goes in thinking, well, I wish they had them or they should have had them.